Hello and welcome to Shay Zasaa and a Zasaa Zooms In. I've got with me today Nohn and Riyike, and we're going to be talking about dual cultures. And I think this is going to go across in different ways, actually, now the more I think about it. When I came up with the title, I was thinking more about how we live in a foreign land. We're of Nigerian descent, and we're raising our children in foreign lands. But we seem to think that our children are Nigerian, even though they have no real, so how can we expect our children to be Nigerian even though, or can they be Nigerian even though they're not being raised in Nigeria, but they're being raised by Nigerian parents? Rike.
I don't know. I've never really thought of my children as Nigerian.
Oh, you must be. That's so interesting. I don't think you must be the minority. I don't know many people that, and I wonder if that's because you're raising your children in Canada.
Yeah.
Is that a thing in Canada? Because in England, we think our children are Nigerian.
No, I think just it's like I was having a conversation and someone was like, "Oh, we're talking," and it was in church, and people were like, "Oh, we need to get these children together because who are they going to marry? Blah blah blah." And I said to someone, I said, by virtue of the fact that I brought them here, raised them here, it's a 50-50 chance at this point.
Yeah.
They may marry a white person, they may marry an Indian, they may marry, I don't know.
They can
They
marry
could
anybody.
anybody.
Yeah.
Because I said if I lived in Nigeria and they brought home someone who was not Nigerian, then it would be an anomaly.
Yeah.
But here, they've gone to school with these people. They've gone to university.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't think of them in those terms. I think of them that they have African or Yoruba heritage, but I don't see them, I see them as Canadians.
That is so interesting. Do you see them as Canadians as well?
50-50.
Isn't that interesting?
As much as but maybe I've tried to instill some Nigeria in them, knowing fully my background that when we were young, being in England, right, my father wiped out Nigeria from us. He wanted us to think British all through and through, right? So coming back to Nigeria, I wanted my Nigerian back. So that mistake I think my father made is what I thought, or I tried to put in them, but I don't think I was totally successful in that respect, because as much as we have a Nigerian father, where even to the point I was teaching Yoruba, I created software to teach Yoruba to them, right?
Where's that software? Can I have it?
Yeah, I never completed, but it's there. Yeah, it's there. I even taught with the school board.
Oh, wow.
Yoruba, even though I don't speak Yoruba as good as I was teaching Yoruba to the school board. So, like Rike said, it's difficult. We've taught them things Nigerian, like, we specifically had this conversation. When you're with older Nigerians, you respect. You don't bring out your hand and shake them. You don't call them by name, right? You double it to a certain extent.
It's prostrate.
Yeah, prostrate.
But when it comes to non-Nigerians, we said, look, it is Jim, James, Ginger, any name by name, right? So that they've imbibed
taught
it.
them to blend wherever they
Yes.
are, because we still have Nigerian heritage. I mean, we are Nigerians.
Yeah.
I'm a Nigerian. We would say we're Nigerian Canadian.
Yeah.
But the kids are Canadian. I mean, they've over the years, they've learned how to adapt. So when they're with Nigerians, to an extent, they behave like Nigerians, but they never lived in Nigeria. Well, I wouldn't say they never lived. My oldest was 5 when we left. The little one, my middle son was 2. My daughter was born in Canada, so she has nothing.
So do you think that there's a difference in them, even the two that were born in Nigeria? Is there a difference?
The only one that there's a difference with is the first one. Because the second one was 2 when he left.
Yeah.
So he kind of doesn't have any recollection per se. When my oldest son, he still remembers some things. And I see that he's different in the way he
Even thinks
and the way he interacts with people. He still has more, for a 5-year-old, just that he lived there for 5 years, he still has more Nigerian-ness in him than my other 2.
the boldness in Nigeria, we're not taught to be very bold.
Yeah.
Right? We're very reserved, and you're almost afraid to
speak.
air your
Yeah.
views.
Yeah.
Right? The middle one doesn't give a hoot.
Yeah.
Right?
He's out
He
there.
will call a spade, and the older one is a little bit, we're having to
push
keep
him.
reminding him that,
Yeah,
look,
to
listen,
kind of push him
you're in a
out
different
there.
environment now.
Yeah.
You're in an environment whereby if you're too quiet,
It doesn't pay you.
it doesn't pay you.
Yeah.
The daughter, forget it. That one.
But you see, it's so interesting. And you know, the reason why I sighed and you looked at me is because, like I said, when I started with this conversation, I'm thinking, but I'm even thinking about myself. So obviously, I'm dual culture myself in terms of my mix.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I realized after, I mean, many years later, as far as I'm concerned, I'm as Nigerian as they come, right? That's what I always thought. And I think I am very Nigerian to a certain extent. But I was raised by a white woman in Nigeria. And I think that the effect of that, I didn't realize it was somebody said to me, he said, you know, people will look at you, they talk to you, your name, your mannerisms, everything, you're very Nigerian, but the closer they get to you, you're not Nigerian at all. And I was so insulted. I was like, how dare you? I'm as Nigerian as they come, just because my mother is white. But I went back to him a couple of years. I said, you're right. I don't even understand how people think. You know what I mean? Because there's certainly something about, even though I was raised in the culture, because I was raised by someone who wasn't of the culture,
Yes.
those things, you know, you don't choose to be, I mean, I always say this thing, that you don't, if she was British, so even though she wasn't teaching us to be British, it rubbed off.
Yes.
Although we were in the environment of, I say she is British, is very much still British, but you know what I mean, it rubbed off on us, so to speak. So the way that Nigerians think, that's why it's interesting that your first son, that thing you were saying about being bold, and you know, the way Nigerians say, I don't even think twice before I'm bold. And it's got me in enough trouble in the Nigerian community because I didn't realize it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? So it's very interesting on that level. But I think that on the level of raising kids, so now I'm raising kids here, who, my mom was very clear. I mean, we were raised in Nigeria, but she always told us, nobody's going to look at you and know that you have a white parent. They're going to look at you and say, black woman. So, you know, you're a Nigerian. Understand it, embrace it, you know, and that's how she raised us. And she's right, because nobody looks at me and thinks, oh, most people don't believe when I say, I have a white mother. But I'm raising my kids now and I'm thinking, you're Nigerian, no? You know, I'm telling you, you're Nigerian. But the reality is, are they really? First of all, I'm not even that Nigerian to be telling them that they're Nigerian. You know what I mean? And I've never really thought about it like that in terms of the cultural things that just, I guess you learn just from being in the culture.
Yeah.
I think culturally, my children know that they're Nigerians. Culturally, so with the foods and the various aspects of it, the clothing, all of that, and I remember, I think we went to a wedding and my middle son would say, he said, "Oh, Mom, are we expected to do this?" Like,
When he gets married.
Do you really think? And I said to him, you know what, the wedding day, the ceremony, the whatever, that's yours. This traditional one, that's mine.
So the answer to that is yes,
No,
you are.
we made it, I think we're also learning, and funny enough, the older they've gotten now, they've embraced more, I don't want to use just Nigerian, more blackness, more Africanism in themselves now, because the music, though the older one has a very broad, he listens to jazz, he listens to some stuff like the Police, and I'm thinking,
he has a very wide idea.
The middle one is banned. I mean, rap. There's this, but African Afrobeat is now part of all three of these kids, which is, I guess, a testimony to what Afrobeat has done to the world. So we can't say because
of us.
No. Well, it's interesting because my kids went to the primary school that they went to was very much a white, privileged environment. You know what I mean? So all of them were probably the only one of, you know, certainly they will be maybe the only black one in their class, but maybe in their year there were a few. My first son had a few, but they were literally the only ones. And at one point, my daughter wanted a flat bum and red hair because her two best friends had red hair and a flat bum, you know, and I had to really try and say, no, you know, this bum, people pay for this bum, you know, you can't, you know what I mean? So I had to try and instill that in her. But what happened was when she went to secondary school, she then got in with a group of black girls, black British girls, black girls, and all of a sudden she loved her hair. All of a sudden she loved her body. All of it, you know what I mean? So there's something about people, like, you know, seeing people of your own, you know what I mean? So whilst I'm saying that, they're British, I mean, she's not, and she actually, before Afrobeats became what it became, she got into all of that because of the people she was moving with, and, you know, so she was very much into black music of any sort, which, you know, at one point I was thinking, Even we are not this black.
Well, just to cut you short on that, about the issue of how their taste or their view about themselves changes by virtue of where they are.
Yeah.
Our older son, when we first got to Canada, he was the only black kid, I think, or the two of
In
them.
his grade.
Only black in his grade. In the school, there were only about 3 or 4 black kids in the whole school.
Oh, wow.
And some of them were mixed. Not
They were
even,
they were not even.
Yeah.
They were-
I mean, my oldest son is pretty fair-skinned, so, I mean, he could be
Mixed.
mixed
maybe.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was the only one that was technically from African descent.
Okay.
And then all his friends were not. There was only one black kid
Yeah.
amongst all his friends. All the other friends were non-African.
They went to Catholic school, so
Yeah.
Okay.
mostly
Right.
like Italians.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
yeah.
But you see, when they go into secondary school, high school, it changed. Because the demography of the high school was vastly different from the elementary school, right?
Yeah.
And friends went from
And they started to
literally,
play basketball.
I know, playing basketball, and so the Caucasian friends became maybe 2 out of 10, right? Indians and maybe Asians, maybe 3 or 4, but majority was now black.
Yeah.
Right. And same thing with the middle son. But our daughter is different though. That's where the difference is. Right? Her friends are all Egyptian, Caucasian, Chinese, name it. Right. She probably has 1 or 2 African,
Yeah.
and that's because of our relationship with the parents.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Her friends in school are not African.
So is that because there are no Africans in school, or is that
Oh,
just?
they're Africans.
They're
So
African.
it's just the way she's.
Just the way she
she's-
is,
Yeah, because
It's so
yeah,
interesting.
so it's difficult to actually say, is it because she was born in Canada and that's the reason why this is where she tends to lean towards,
Yeah.
or because even her music is quite interesting. Her taste of music is very, very interesting.
I mean, it's incredible because when you think about it, I guess, I always say we're the sum total of our upbringing, our environment, our this, you know what I mean? So, yeah. And I guess because I loved Nigeria so much, it pains me. I'm like, I need them to know Nigeria. I need them to know they're from Nigeria. I need them to, because obviously when we were there, I
Yeah.
think it was a great place to be. I think it still is now. It's just a
is.
different,
Yeah.
it's a different place. But it's like, I took my son out to Nigeria and you don't know I think what we have that they don't have correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly I took for granted for a long period of time is growing up in a country where everybody is the same color as you and everybody that is the same color as you is in all position of power and whatnot. So my son, luckily we go to a black church, so he had seen black people in position of power, but generally, aside from that, the black people he saw were not in positions of power at all. They were like cleaners, janitors, whatever. So when he went to Nigeria, and he was a very confident guy, by the time he came back from Nigeria, I was like, wow, because he suddenly had a confidence that has come with us naturally because you've grown up with it, but you don't realize that seeing that as you grow up does something to you, and that not having it does something else to you. Because sometimes I look, and I always used to have this problem with black Americans when they would say, they're always going on about the slave trade, and and I'm always like, come on now. But actually, if you've not grown up with that around you, I now better understand their insecurities or whatever it is that. So I think it's sorry.
Yeah. No, I also like what this thing you just said, or the conversation you just had now. Rika has had it several times about Black Americans and this, and so there was a year, I think it's 2015 or 16. I went to Nigeria with the boys, just 3 of us.
Yeah.
Right now, sometimes I can be a little. I want you to grow up the way I grew up, and so we went to Kano.
Oh,
right,
wow.
and literally put them on an Okada. That's a motorcycle, right? The middle son never, ever seen. I mean, if you could remember, I don't have pictures. The fear on his face.
Bless
But
him.
I was being a typical Nigerian father that says, "Look, hardship it won't kill you, right?" So he sat on the bike and literally holding the guy like my
For
life.
dear life.
Right? And I took them. This one, I know Rika didn't agree with it, but I did something that was quite interesting. We had near where we lived in Kano, where we live, we've got a really nice hotel, a nasty hotel, and our house all within the same street.
Yeah.
So I went to the nastiest of the hotels for us to stay, even though we're blocks away from the house, right?
Okay,
kids,
what was your point here exactly?
point was more, maybe I'm thinking of to toughen them up a bit to see the reality is not where we're coming from. Reality is
Yeah, I
that
guess they haven't seen, and we come from privileged backgrounds, let's
Yes.
face it, even in Nigeria,
Yes.
but at least we have seen the non-privileged, which I think sometimes in this country, and even in Canada, you don't get to see, not that they don't exist, because they do exist, but probably in our day-to-day life, you don't get to, at least in Nigeria, at some point, you will see a beggar, you will see something that will let you know that there are people worse off than you. But
I mean,
I think for me, it's not so much them seeing the privilege or whatever. I think something that we take for granted that we had in Nigeria that we don't think about it is resilience. Because we live in a country where you have to make things work. There's no, it didn't work, so no,
Yeah.
there's
It had
no
to work.
electricity,
yeah.
find a way.
generator, diesel, whatever you need to do to make it work. There's no water, there's a borehole there,
Yeah.
we needed to make it work.
Those are the reasons.
And those were the things that actually that was the fear that I had when we were moving to Canada. Was I said that I'm so scared because I see that a lot of children who have grown up in these other societies, they don't have resilience. That's why the first thought is I'm going to give up.
Yes.
But
yes.
we don't have that growing up from where we came from. We couldn't give up. There's no giving up. That's the reason why in your 30s and 40s you can move your whole life to a different country, people you've never met, nothing, and still try to make something of yourself and still try to live the best life that you can. So, and that was the thing that I think was the thing that was scary for me. So that was the thing that I wanted to instill in them is that you can't give up. It doesn't matter what is. It's not so much the privilege, it's not so much the money, whatever, but whatever is happening to you, you have to look at it and
Impossible. That's what you were saying.
Yeah.
That's
That's
where that
not a
comes
word.
from. Because I would say to them, I say, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst?
Yeah.
I said sometimes the worst thing that could happen has already happened. So what's next? What else are we going to do?
Yeah.
Are we going to fold up and die?
Yeah.
You're going to curl up in the corner and just wait for death?
Yeah.
I remember we're always saying, now is the best time to fail. Yeah, you got so many years ahead of you to start all over. Initially, they didn't understand, so they were always afraid of, especially, our oldest son used to play hockey, ice hockey, and he was a goalkeeper.
Oh, wow.
And this is a testimony to how I think them seeing resilient parents. This kid had never skated in his whole life.
Wow.
How old was he? Was he 7 or 8 when we started? Right. So, and thank God we got late to the tryouts. That's when the tryouts are, the kids come in and they skate, and then they pick you, and so we got late. So there was no time to actually test him on the ice.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he geared up, never skated in his life. The guy just, wobble, got there. Now, the testimony was that by the end of the first season, as we call it, right, he was the best goalie.
Wow.
But thankfully, as a goalie, you don't need to skate too much, right?
Yeah.
But that was a big thing, right? And I was proud to be a Nigerian. That yes, Nigerian they carry last, right? So things that it's interesting. Like that is really important. And so kids have never seen power outages. They've never seen up NEPA, right? They don't understand. I've never been to a toilet where there's no water. So that hotel experience was meant to open their eyes that look, there are people in this world who don't have water, who have. There was no light. These guys saw a bed sheet with cigarette holes in it. They'd never seen their life. They didn't sleep. Those 3 days, and I'm not joking.
You stayed for 3 days, not even one
And they
day.
have not forgotten till now.
They didn't poop.
Wow.
I'm not joking. They didn't poop, right?
Oh my
They didn't have a
goodness.
bath, right? And I for those 3 days, nope. Our
How
house,
old were they at this time?
This was 2016, so Joshua was 15,
15 and
and Damola was 12.
12, yeah.
Wow.
I had a big bowl of water. They wash plates, basically did.
That was a little extreme as far as I was concerned.
Oh no,
But I guess you drove the point home. I mean, I think what you said about resilience is
Yeah.
so key because, like you said, we take it for granted because you don't have a choice. And it's funny because one of my friends said to me once, she came to England for an extended period of time. So normally she'll come for summer or something. She came for like 6 months. And she said to me, she said, I need to go back. I said, why? She said, because I've stopped praying. I don't pray in England because obviously everything is going fine, you know. So, you know, she's like, my prayer life has gone downhill because I have nothing. You know, in Nigeria, you literally, you have to pray. You cannot not
But
be
you're
praying.
praying for things that you shouldn't.
Well, that is true.
That's
Is
another,
true.
no, that's another angle to it.
That's another-
a weird
yes.
thing because you know
Yes.
some of the things that we pray for, you're like, really?
They're mundane, right?
Like,
however,
these are things that you know.
right, when you think about it, that same fact that we're praying for the mundane things are the things that's given us that same strength in a foreign country not to give up.
But
Right?
you know, I actually think that we forget that life is in the mundane. Literally, life is in the everyday mundane stuff, the boring stuff, the repetitive stuff. That's where life happens. I mean, you have your big bits here, you know, but that's where life happens, and so that's really what is important. You know what I mean? So, we do that. We have to pay for it. It's like is a bit of a thing.
It
So
is.
I think as the kids grow up now, thinking about it, are they really Nigerians? They're Nigerians in words. In their own, in our eyes, we're believing they're Nigerians, right? But in their own hearts, I'm sure they're also going through some confusion themselves right now. Are we Nigerians? Are we Canadians? Right? We're black. We're white. Because I remember my daughter, our daughter, she used to draw. She draws. She only drew Caucasians initially, but now that has changed.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I only saw Caucasians.
Yeah.
And so my pictures were all Caucasian.
Yeah.
But hers has changed. So she's now drawing people of her own color.
It's so funny that the time when it changed was that I took her to a wedding. That was
A
her first
Nigerian
wedding that she
wedding,
went
okay.
to.
Yeah.
That was a Nigerian wedding. She was so excited. She was beyond. She got home that day and she drew.
She drew somebody in Nigeria.
You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
And she actually drew it and painted it, and someone actually bought it off her. Like she
Oh,
did a
wow.
very great job. But from then on, she started to appreciate. Not because she didn't kind of appreciate it before, but now she saw it
Made
differently,
sense now,
right?
yes,
It made
yeah.
sense because, I mean, we went to a Nigerian church first. Now we go to a kind of mixed. It's pretty mixed. We have a white pastor, so it's like, you know. So
Yeah.
so she kind of misses that, and that's one of the things that I know. It's not something that we did by, would I say? I mean, it was
Intentionally.
choice. It wasn't intentionally, but when you move from one country or where you move from where everybody is the same color, and you bring your children or you give birth to them here, but you are a minority. It does something to them
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that is different from how everybody else experiences life. One of the things that I hated the most for them was that they didn't grow up with cousins, or they didn't grow up with aunties that were biological. So here in Canada, we would say we have Canadian cousins. So
Yeah.
all of us are cousins, though we're not related.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they would go, this is auntie someone, and this auntie. So, oh, that's my cousin, but they're not related.
Yeah.
But that's the only connection that they have to people who look like them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's. I wish it didn't happen that way, but I mean, we were trying to give them the best life that we could possibly try. I mean, like, judging from what is going on in the world today, but that is something that I personally I feel bad about in my moments. That my children didn't have all of that. I grew up with my cousins. I grew up with everyone. I could go down the street, or that we went to the same school, or that I have cousins, like my twin cousins. They lived like two.
Yeah.
I used to be like the third twin. Like we were always together. If I ran to school, the driver would bring. So it was always like that, and they could grow up with that. But now they're growing up without all of that, but also trying to figure it out even in the midst of all of this. I think it's very complex for them. We are adults. We can.
Yeah.
I missed that even coming here. I missed my siblings not being with me. Eventually, my siblings are now there. So, but I don't know how that looks for them.
Yeah.
And even though we talk about it now, because all my siblings are in Canada and they have all their cousins now, but it's not the same. I mean, we don't see. It's not like growing up together. But they now have a relationship with their cousins.
Yeah.
But there's still something missing, and I don't know how you are going to give that to them.
I don't know that we can.
I don't know.
that we can. I think. Sorry, wait.
No.
I think because it's funny because one day took one of my sons. There was a lady in church whose grandson was in town, and she was looking after him. So I told my son, "Oh, we're going to take his name is Joshua. We're going to take Joshua on a play date." And when we pulled up outside the house, I said to the lady, "Send him out." We're outside the house, and as soon as the boy came running out of the door, my son in the back just gasped. He said, "Oh, Mommy, he's brown like me." And I hadn't realized, that was when I now realized the importance of seeing people that look like you. But because his name was Joshua, nowhere in his head did he think that the guy was, so I think it's a very interesting one. I don't even think we've started to scratch the surface, because I think this dual culture thing, gosh, we've got like a minute.
Yeah.
This dual culture thing is in so many, it's not even dual, it's almost like,
There's so many facets to it, so many
Yeah.
things that we're yet to understand, and I'm hoping that their generation will begin to understand it better than we are understanding it. Because yes, they have a part of us in them, a part of Nigeria in them, maybe just 1/10, but let's see.
And I guess it's also just about letting them know their culture, where they come from, and hoping that at some point, if they feel a draw or whatever, let them know enough to not be strangers, or seen as outsiders, I guess. But oh well, we're out of time. Can you believe that? We haven't even started. So this dual culture thing, I don't know. We're raising children in foreign countries, children that we think are Nigerian, but are they really? Can we actually put that on them? It's interesting because, in Nigeria, you take the nationality of your father. But in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in Canada, you take the nationality of where you are born.
Yeah.
So, it's like, are they Nigerian? Are they, okay. So they're of dual cultures.
We have a lot of hyphenated people in Canada. It's
Yeah, Nigerian Canadians and everything. So yes, I guess they're whatever. Anyway, see you next time.